Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with Matthew North this morning, and we're just going to do a live news update, chat, conversation sort of thing going on this morning. Let me make sure my YouTube channel is muted there, and it is, so we're not getting some creepy feedback. But Matthew North did the wonderful expose on Joe Rogan earlier this week, and he and I have been talking a lot this week, so I wanted to have him on just to do a short conversation and talk about other things going on, such as Alex Jones and whatnot. So, Matthew North, welcome.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate you having me on, and I was actually quite surprised that you picked up that work, and I appreciated your appreciation for it. And I just hope more people will begin to pick up on your information and all your great research that you put out there through Logos Media. So it's great to be here.
Well, I appreciate that. And, it's been a long, tough road. It's interesting, as they say, you get the most flack when you're over the target. I'm just doing a few setup things here and trying to figure out where stuff is. So it is showing that we're live right now. I don't know if we have anybody in the chat yet. It looks like things here and trying to figure out. It looks like we do have somebody in there. Showing that we're live right now. So anyway, well, good job on your video, and trying to figure out. Looks like we do have somebody. So, what made you decide to start investigating Joe Rogan? Now, just to point out, you're young, I'm getting closer and closer to 50, and what made you in your early 20s. And we don't see too many people your age. I'm getting closer and closer. Somebody's saying there's a feedback. Early 20s. There we go. And I just had it made sure that it was muted, and then it apparently wasn't. So, what made you get into this? Usually, people your age don't get into detailed research and analysis like you did.
Well, I had a series of events happen in my life. I had some falling outs with people, and I began to look at this information. And I realized that this is the most important aspect of life, and understanding these deceptions. When you see how fake the world is around you, and then you begin to understand how it's being orchestrated, it's almost like you can't go back after that point. As far as Rogan, he has been so influential. I'm in the Midwest, but I think all over the country, you see trends originate out of his podcast, and he literally bombards people's subconscious. And you're having a conversation, with someone my age, and they'll just reference something off Joe Rogan's podcast or just repeat it word for word. And it's like, you're literally drawing from the database that Rogan's giving you, that 95% of where your thought process takes place in your subconscious. So, I mean, just him creating the culture and actively influencing everybody around me. It's such an important deception for me to highlight, in my opinion. And then I fell into your work and started seeing all these MK Ultra connections and the whole history behind it and the direction it's moving in the future. So it definitely was a big deception. So I'm glad I'm able to jump on it right now and get this information out.
What did you think about Alex Jones going on Joe Rogan's podcast last week or 2 weeks ago?
Well, I expected it. It was always my contention that it was the only authentic aspects of the beef were having you on. So your research as a person and you as a person. So that was authentic. And then also threatening on it, which Jones could have simply buried Rogan with on it, because he was always there and he understands everything that's going on surrounding on it. But he never mentioned it by name. So I was always
and you pointed out that I mentioned on it when I was on
Right.
AJ's show. And so that was like oops moment, apparently.
Well, it appeared to be, because once you said on it by name, he would always call it DMT, Colts, and Austin. So not very many people understand what he was talking about there. You obviously did. I picked up on it. And when you mentioned, you're like, we haven't even got into on it yet. He moved on from it real quick. And I think it was like the last time you were on, second to last or last time you were on. So he definitely didn't want to elaborate on the subject. So eventually I expected them to make up. Jones and Rogan seem to go through these cycles, whether it be for Jones's own credibility or for more traction on his platform. go through these cycles of, being at odds with each other, having this beef, and then they always make up and they're great buddies again. And Jones goes on and talks about how they've partied together a lot, so maybe there's some compromising going on there. I don't know, but they've known each other for decades. So, but he always mentions that they partied together. So maybe Rogan has some compromising information on Jones, or they're just involved in the same networks. I think it's a little bit of both.
Now, part of the reason I wanted to do this live news update show today is I got a text from AJ yesterday morning at 7:12 a.m. And he said, and so AJ, I spoke to him. He called me the day after he was on Rogan's show, and I spoke to him briefly, and he was pretty out of it. He was on meds. He had just had surgery on his bicep, and so he was pretty out of it. But yesterday at 7:12 a.m., he writes, "Please come back on when I'm back in town next week." And so, I wanted to talk about this with the audience because obviously I've had a lot of attacks for going on his show, people calling me, "Oh, you sold out, you're a shill because you went on his show." Here's the thing a lot of people don't get is, he's got an audience of like 1.5 million people plus, or larger. Plus, he's syndicated on radio shows all over the place. And so I can keep the information on MK Ultra and kids doing drugs limited to the 60,200 people on my podcast, or I can reach 100, 200,000 more people in an afternoon and try to help other young people out of it, and to start, you get out of the DMT, ayahuasca cults, the mushroom cults, all of this kind of stuff. And so it becomes a dilemma, and I don't doubt that there's a possibility that I was set up. My live feed on the main channel was shut down, and it's going to be at least another about 6 weeks before it's on again, if they turn it on. It was a trumped-up premise. Now, Joe Rogan is allowed to have AJ on his podcast, and his channel doesn't get shut down. But if I release my own interview with AJ, my live feed gets shut down for telling kids not to do drugs. And then you see AJ going on Joe Rogan's show shortly after, and it raises some serious red flags. And of course, my work, and the interview that AJ and I did was completely omitted from the conversation again. And we see this is the common theme, even with Jason Burmis and Luke Radowski and all these other people that have been doing analyses of this whole situation. None of them are talking about my work. Red flag all over the place.
Yep.
And they're, and so they're trying to paint this, and create a whole situation where I'm pushed out, but I was clearly used as a chess piece to warn them that they were actually going to really expose things. And the day after Alex was on Joe Rogan's show, when he called me, he sort of gave me a warning that his producer was afraid to have me back on, that they might get sued for name dropping. And, and he basically kind of said, hey, we need to have you back on, but we don't want to discuss, we don't want you naming names, etc., even though he names names on his show all the time, right? So it was I felt like it was kind of a warning to me. And like and then the whole situation with him going on Rogan's show, it was just like, wow, 5-hour show. They didn't bother to mention me and the whole situation once. And so is there another agenda? Was the agenda to push me out and to increase both of their platforms even further? And Joe Rogan was under heat for the guy from Twitter, Jake, what's his name? Having
Jack
Jack Dorsey, and having him on. And we saw Rogan's show blowing up and everybody realizing that Rogan was most likely on the take. And so, we see Rogan's show plummeting, hundreds of thousands of people waking up at once. And then suddenly AJ is friends with Rogan again and going back on his shows. So to me, this whole thing looks like a big chess game. And, I'm one of the pawns on the board that they're trying to use. And then my channel gets shut down. My live feed, anyway, gets shut down, not the full channel. So, it's when AJ sends me texts like this, please come back on when I'm back in town next week. And I wanted to bring this up to the audience because no doubt I'm going to be accused for selling out, for using his platform to reach hundreds of thousands of people and trying to warn them about this agenda. And to me, if we save some lives and save some people from getting caught in the MKUltra counterculture BS that they've been peddling for since the 50s, it's worth it, And I get messages just about every day from people for helping them back, helping them out of this New Age, CIA, Esalen Institute, Stanford Research Institute drug cult, or cults. And I've exposed that there's several dozens of cults that they've launched. So I wanted to get feedback from the audience this morning on what they think if I do go back on, and, get your, let you, since you've investigated this whole thing and the angles behind the scenes with the JRE show, et cetera, more than I have. I wanted to get your feedback as well, but, I'd love to see what the audience has to say in the comments here. And Freakin' Freddy says, so does anyone think that Joe and Alex was a stage drama, or is it just me? And I think it was probably a staged drama, and that's what we're here to talk about this morning. So, that's kind of what it's all about. So, people, post up your comments in the chat there if you're listening. Love to hear your feedback on this situation as well. But go ahead, Matt.
Well, I would agree with that comment that for the most part, it was a stage drama. And regardless, it ended in that fashion where both of them benefited
you
from
just
it.
started
Joe
cutting
now
out.
has credibility again.
You just started cutting out there. Let it catch back up. Not sure what's going on there. Go ahead.
Okay. So as far as it started out, regardless of how it started out, if Alex was legitimately upset at Rogan for some reason, it doesn't matter. It ended in a stage drama where it's a WWE show where both of them benefited in the end. Both of them.
And I did not. And I'm accused of, selling out because I went on AJ's show.
Yep. And then your live streaming abilities get taken away as well. And I honestly think Rogan has that much access and influence where he can remove shows. For example, with the Elon Musk securing 420. I forget exactly how it went, but anyway, the manipulation of stock prices, people broke that down very well in YouTube videos, and every single one of those videos were then removed from YouTube. It seems like anybody who criticizes Rogan ends up getting censored, except for Alex, but it ultimately turned into a WWE show where everybody benefited except for Jan. So
I was the fall guy for the whole thing, essentially. So Sanchez says, yeah, bro, go back on. And then William says, jump on the censorship wave while it's on the right side next week. And then Sanchez says, you being on AJ's show years ago is how I found your work. And then William says, I found you from your last appearance. So, and this is just a handful of comments, and there's only 44 people listening because my other channel was 62 or 60,200 viewers. I can't broadcast to that channel for at least another month and a half. Who knows? And their charges are just that I violated community standards. They don't tell you how you violated them. Right. Apparently going on and exposing MKUltra and their promotion of drugs to kids and the destruction of the family is a violation of community standards. Kevin says, go back on. And then Freddie says, but your damage will be, or your credibility will be damaged. And then, it's like, Ahmed is speaking in Serbo-Croat. Let's see, Evropskam, and in Europe. Sorry, I'm just trying to read Serbo-Croatian. My Serbo-Croatian is terrible these days. And he says good morning in Serbo-Croatian. So, anyway, let's see. Go back on and get into On It and Aubrey Marcus. So I think that's the show that they're afraid is going to rock the boat, Mm-hmm. And, I think that's what they don't want.
Well, regardless, I disagree with anybody who says that you going on Jones's show, it loses your credibility, because I agree with you 100% that you should absolutely use that avenue if you can to even get some of this information out. And I also agree that you should go back on, but I don't think you should hold any punches. Maybe not mention On It, but really get deeply into the history of MK Ultra and reference it and put it in reference with what Rogan is doing now and with what this modern MK Ultra movement's doing, because understanding the history allows you to understand which direction this modern movement's going in. And the fact that they've been, like you said, they've been doing this since the 50s. It's a continuation of these same mind control, cultural shifting operations.
So let's see. Milk Latte says, go for it, Jan. No other platform with such amount of people will have you at the moment. Use it wisely. Yeah, back in the day, I was even on Coast to Coast AM before I started exposing all this stuff. As long as you're selling the agenda, they promote you. And as soon as you wake up and go, hey, wait a second, it says, Freddie says he's going to catch the replay. And then William says, I still think AJ went rogue for a bit and was reined in, very possibly. Let's see, and yet again, they don't want to tell your name, Jan. Agreed, Ahmed. And let's see. I'm just reading their comments right now, but yeah, the whole thing is just it stinks. Mm-hmm. No matter how I look at it, it's very possible that my channels and everything could be totally shut down, and I would need, way more support from the audience than I've been getting to be able to pull this off, because, when they shut down my live feed and I can't reach 60,000 people, I can't, it makes it a lot more difficult to pay the bills. So, it's good to have all of you, out there in the audience support the show and everything, because, if I go on there and try to expose more of this stuff and I'm shut down, then what am I going to do? Let's see. Dr. Cameron and the sub-projects with COINTELPRO and Mockingbird Media has a lot of people confused and getting triggered. And then, and that was Lee. CJM says, no one has credibility on YouTube anymore. It's only about getting info out and not who cares anymore. Might as well jump. Yeah, I don't know. Topic is to do AJ or not to do AJ. Yeah, pretty much. And to talk to you about your show. And then Kevin says, your credibility is bulletproof. Ahmed says, I'm going to watch the replay. He's going out. Take care. Ciao, vidi mose. Ahmed, enjoy. Oh, so, wow. Anyway, it's like, it's a tough shoot. It's a tough situation to decide on, because, if, I've spent a decade building my channel up to where it was. And, when you're not promoting kittens and puppies and selling psychedelic drugs, you're not the top podcast anymore. They push you down pretty quickly, and I started out back in the late 2000s as one of the biggest shows out there. And so it's been interesting to watch them try to suppress my research over the years. And, we should just, and I should mention that I uploaded your show to my BitChute channel exposing all of this stuff. And I highly recommend people watch that. I also uploaded it to both of my YouTube channels. Here's Matthew's channel here, Matthew North, and you'll want to watch this episode here. And I recommend everybody download it. I've also put it on my channel. I corrected the audio for Matthew the other day and re-uploaded it to my channel. You're welcome, brother, and no problem on that. And so it's got 5,029 views on my channel. It's got not many on BitChute, but it's got like 105 110 views on BitChute. But people need to download it and re-upload it all over the place. We need that to go viral so that people can see what the heck is going on there, And, it's like people were attacking me. Well, how can you go on Alex Jones' show and then have this guy on who's attacking Alex Jones? And it's like, well, Alex is a platform. And we're not saying that everything Alex puts out is invalid. Alex puts out a lot of valid research that totally coincides with work that I've done. And then you see stunts like last week that makes you scratch your head and go, wait a second. My being on his show looks like a setup, And then him going on Joe Rogan's show. The whole thing is just fishy as can be.
Yeah, and I agree. And also, who knows what could happen if you did go on his show? Maybe they'll censor you for good and use Alex Jones as an excuse. Maybe that's what their game plan is. I don't really know. These are sophisticated psychological warfare operations, in my opinion, and Alex is as well. And I've done research on that and videos on that. And I think he's a mind war operation where one of the core concepts of mind war is weaponizing truth. So taking a lot of truthful information and using it as a weapon to also mix in disinformation and lead people in the wrong direction. And Jan's show gets censored on Alex. So having Jan on is an aspect of truth, using him as a weapon.
You're cutting out there again.
Regardless, that information still gets out. So I'm not sure if that's
Go ahead. Yeah, you're back again, but your feed keeps getting garbled up there. I don't know if you have something else running in the background.
Okay. So having Jan on is truthful information, and that information gets out there regardless. So I think that's always a positive. What they do with it, I don't know. But for example, Jan's interview with Jones gets censored off YouTube, but for exposing real truth, not actual good information, directing people in the right direction. But Rogan can sit up there on his podcast and take illegal substances like mushrooms on camera, and that's fine, and then a kid sees that and they want to take mushrooms. They think it's just a normal thing to do. And they think it's not a massive experience that, is something to prepare for. That isn't something to take lightly. Like you just take it, like Rogan portrays. So why isn't his podcast censored? Where Jan's is.
And he can sit there and rip bong loads, and even back before it was legal, he was just sitting there smoking weed all the time. You pointed out he may have been doing coke in the background, etc. So, and then I'm censored for telling people not to do drugs. How does that work? It's just ridiculous. I also wanted to mention that, and I'm probably going to play this while we're sitting here talking. My Terence and Dennis McKenna exposed video that I put out yesterday. I think that might be a good one for us to broadcast today so people can see more of that. You down with me playing that while we're going here? All right, let's bring that up. I'm going to share screen here. Let's see. Share audio. Here we go. I'm going to bring this up here. Up. Here, I just shared that on the wrong monitor, so let me just fix that just a second. Bring this over here. Where'd it go now? I just had it. Good grief. All right, here we go.
Important for you to do this.
Is the audio
I wonder
playing?
myself.
Anyone? Do you hear the audio? I'm not hearing it.
You mean, am I the
yeah, it should be.
alien ambassador, whether I like it or not?
Are you hearing the audio, Matt?
Yeah.
Well, I often, when asked this question, I've said, it
Sorry,
beats
folks.
honest
Screw
work.
that up.
I mean, my brother is a PhD in 3 subjects and works in hard science, and I don't think it's brought him immense happiness, not that he's despondent, but I was always kind of a slider, and certainly when I reached La Chirera in 1971, I had a price on my head by the FBI. I was running out of money. I was at the end of my rope. La Chirera. And then they recruited me and said, with a mouth like yours, there's a place for you in our organization. And, I've worked in deep background positions about which the less said, the better. And then, about 15 years ago, they shifted me into public relations, and I've been there to the present. I think ideas get me high, and I like the feeling of understanding. And I love diversity to the point of weirdness. I mean,
There's more to it than that for you because, being tuned into ideas and turned on by ideas is one thing, but you can keep it just to yourself. The sharing of it is something else. I think that's what I'm getting at, right? You do that.
Well, one thing is, I'm really fascinated. I think of myself as a pretty savvy person and not easily led into false dogma. Well, so that's enough of that. Now I want to address the concerns that we've been dealing with over the past 2 days. And from my perspective, we sort of designed this weekend with the notion of showcasing Rian's thought, and I think we've done that very well. To put what I'm going to say this morning in context, I just want to briefly review the basis of her theory. It is quite simply that the absence of patriarchy does not imply matriarchy. The natural and most long-running form of human organization is what Rian has named partnership society. Partnership societies were the norm up until, pick a number, 4,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. In any case, eventually falling with the fall of Minoan Crete to Mycenaean invaders around 1000 BC, and that set us into the era of dominator cultures, which she believes, and I agree with her, is a temporary, I won't say aberration, a temporary, necessary adaptation, but one that we can now move beyond. Rian's approach is basically to say what happened, that there was partnership society, and then she's very insistent that there was a confluence of factors which caused the shift from the partnership society to the dominator culture. I, being cast more in the fanatical mode, prefer to think that there was one major cause and that its adumbrations can be explicated by the methods of archaeology, good logic, and a little visionary imagining. And so I want to tell you the story this morning. Remember, I said yesterday, the best idea will win. And if you want to do that kind of total revisioning of the position of human beings in the world, I think you have to take at first a deconstructionist approach and take away everything that impedes the construction of the new point of view.
And here we're just showing the connections to Rianne Eisler and Intel. Gregory Bateson, one of the co-founders of the CIA, Macy Conferences, which are MK Ultra, etc. Of course, there's no CIA MK Ultra connections there for Terence McKenna, none at all. Humanists, Dr. John Dee, the Spy Master, Julian Huxley, Cybernetics, which of course is MK Ultra, Stanford Research Institute, Tavistock.
Hi, I just wanted to know if you have heard about a book called The Mutant Message.
No.
Okay, I want to tell you a little bit about it because it's very interesting. I think it follows what you're talking about.
Totally
I love your idea of a collective consciousness, and I think the book describes an Aboriginal tribe in Australia that has been living out the way in which you're speaking, a collective. And what they've come to the conclusion of is that they can no longer procreate because they have recognized that they can no longer exist on this planet. And the reason they call the book The Mutant Message is that they believe we are a mutant life form on this planet that is destroying it to the extent that they can no longer continue their lineage. And this is an interesting concept because it's the first culture I know that has selectively chosen not to breed. And along with your concept of raising our consciousness so that we understand the destructive nature of ourselves, what about a parallel vision of reducing our population as these people are, of consciously choosing not to procreate at this time?
You know, I'd like to point out here, it's eugenics for the elite, it's dysgenics for everybody else. People get hung up on that point constantly.
That, and the mushroom pointed this out to me, if every woman had only one child, the population of the planet would fall 50% in 40 years. 50% in 40 years without war, revolution, coercion, anything else. Now, when you suggest this to people, they say, well, didn't they try that in China and it failed? Yes, but you have to think about a couple of things. First of all, a child born to a woman in Maui or Malibu or Manhattan, that child will use between 800 and 1,000 times more resources in its lifetime than a child born to a woman in Bangladesh. Why do we preach birth control in Bangladesh? We should be preaching it on Maui, Manhattan, and Malibu, because the women in those places are highly educated, socially responsible, global people, and therefore are the population most likely to respond to this suggestion. If 15% of the women in the high-tech industrial democracies were to limit their childbearing to one child, within 10 years, certain pressure indicators on the planet would begin to move away from the red and into the black. So I think that we have got to deal with this question of population. There are clearly too many people. And one woman, one child, you know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist or a psychedelic advocate to understand the impact of that. If the population of the Earth were cut in half, everybody alive would be twice as wealthy. It's possible in 120 years that we could reduce the Earth's population to 1 billion very healthy, very comfortable, very well-educated people. Okay, that's part of what the mushroom said, and I think it may seem radical in some circles, but not here, perhaps. It also said something else, which I rarely mention, but since you brought it up, there are not only too many people, there are too many men. And I would be very interested in seeing a set of social policies, tax incentives, medical policies, insurance policies put in place to limit male birth. It's very rare in
Terence
mammal
McKenna's
populations that you have a 50-50 ratio of male to female. And in fact, it's well known
telling everybody else to
that
limit male birth while he has a son,
infants
Finn.
are less robust than female infants. And the reason we have a 50-50 sexual ratio is because we artificially support males and withdraw resources from females. I suspect that in the High Paleolithic, the ratio was closer to 2 to 1. And my supposition in thinking about this is probably that the best ratio is about 3 to 1. This is the way to feminize the human race. If you're serious, this is the way to advance women. If you're serious, then what you have is less men, women whose dedication to the reproductive activities is confined in time to the amount of time it takes to raise only one child. This would be tremendously salutary to our problems. I've never heard it advocated, even by the most radical lesbian feminist yada yada. I've never heard anyone say male birth should be limited, but it obviously should. And through amniocentesis and this sort of thing, we can steer ourselves toward a population with the predominance of females, and those females should have only one child, and 75% of those children should also be female. This would seem, and I don't consider myself a gung-ho feminist. I mean, I'm a feminist, but I don't read the literature or try to understand all the factions and theories. As a humanist, I advocate a reduction in male births. It just seems obvious that that's the way to go. If it doesn't seem obvious to you, then let's have a public debate about it and at least make it part of the rhetoric of the culture that this is an option for people to think about.
Was there a connection between Terence or me and the CIA?
Psychedelic movement in general? Or?
I can't speak for the psychedelic movement in general, but I can definitively tell you that neither Terence nor I ever had anything to do with the CIA.
I think they wanted to start a big
Central Intelligence
feud
Agency.
Between me and Dennis.
Now you might say, well, I could crack a joke and say, yes, well, we worked for the CIA, we worked for the Cosmic Intelligence Agency. But then some of your audience might
He's basically admitting it.
So let me make it clear. He never worked for the CIA, and neither did I.
Do you know where this comes from? There's a specific talk he gave where he discusses agents.
And yes, I know where it comes from, and I will dissect that right now. He said in one talk something casually about, well, I was working deep cover for a while, and then they moved me into PR. Right, and who the they
Notice how he's downplaying
was never
and they're trying to confuse
but I can tell you who the they are because those remarks Jan Irvin either wasn't paying attention or was taking them out of context or is just an idiot, because the meaning of it is clear if you listen to the whole talk, and he is talking about he worked for the mushrooms,
Terence
which
McKenna,
he did understand,
got Terence
correctly
out of,
or not, to be actually
the FBI for promoting
whether
drugs.
it was the mushrooms themselves or the representative of an intelligent race that was controlling it, but he worked for the mushrooms. That was the they that he worked for, and he was deep cover. And that refers to the years when he was not in public, when he was actually in the basement growing mushrooms as furiously as he possibly could, distributing those. That's deep cover, right? Then he decided, well, this is not sustainable. Sooner or later,
is a chart. I want to pause this here
for
just a second to discuss this. These are the things that Terence promoted over the years through his many talks and lectures. Native revivalism, which is the archaic revival, that was a term created by CIA co-founder Gregory Bateson, which is found in his OSS memos, which I published in an article about 5 years ago. Psychedelics, obviously, that's CIA, MKUltra, military intelligence, and the counterculture was the real bulk of the MKUltra program, not just the Manchurian Candidate, red herring. Neo-shamanism, that's Bateson, MKUltra, SRI, Changing Images of Man. Also, Gordon Wasson was behind that, launching the neo-shamanic thing with Maria Sabina down in Oaxaca, Mexico. Dominator culture we just saw, that's Rianne Eisler, McKenna, and that comes out of the Club of Rome. And feminism, which is, I've exposed the quotes from Gloria Steinem working for the CIA many times, but that's a big CIA front as well, of course, being promoted by Eisler, Joyce Glassman, etc. 2012 was created by CIA agent and Yale professor Michael Coe, and you can find that he was CIA right on the Wikipedia page. Stoned ape was a theory created by Terence, but it really comes out of Teilhard de Chardin's, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin's work from the Piltdown hoax, and he was a Jesuit and from the Roman Catholic Church, and of course that's humanism. He also worked with Julian Huxley on that, and then humanism is, again, Eisler, of course. McKenna is working on that, but Julian Huxley was a big humanist, which we saw a bit ago. And the Humanist Manifesto, transhumanism, again, that's a word even coined by Julian Huxley, promoted by the CIA, promoted by all of the eugenicists, etc. Even the Dalai Lama's in on that today. Timothy Leary, who admitted he was a CIA agent from, I think, 62 onward. I think he was CIA long before then. And then again, we see Teilhard there. Habit and novelty theory, that was originally... the Omega Point theory, promoted by Teilhard again, Alfred North Whitehead, and then Time Wave Zero, which came out of Teilhard yet again. Eugenics, John B.S. Haldane. That's where Terence gets the infamous quote that he twists a little bit. You know, the world isn't just stranger than you suppose. It's stranger than you can suppose. That's a quote that he changed from John Haldane. And then, of course, Aldous and Julian Huxley, the CIA et al. The New Age movement is, of course, right out of there and out of SRI, Changing Images of Man, the Esalen Institute, etc. Cybernetics, which we've shown on screen. Bateson, that's also the Macy conferences. Rianne Eisler, David Loy, Marshall McLuhan, I.A. Richards, Norbert Wiener, the Lindisfarne Association, CIA, et al. So this is almost finished here. I'll just finish playing that. I just wanted to break that down on what this chart is showing, because it shows how many projects that Terence, CIA and intelligence projects that Terence McKenna was really promoting, and the yellow arrows are the ones that are specifically CIA, while Dennis is sitting there saying that he had no ties to the CIA. And now we're going to see him ridicule the whole idea about the Esalen connections. And he wants to play down that Terence was actually scholar in residence at the Esalen Institute and not just someone passing through. So he spends a big lie there.
So he decided to go into public relations, and he started talking about it a lot more, and that's when he became, the spokesman that he is. But he was working for the mushrooms, and for Jan to take this and construe it to mean that he was working for the CIA, I mean, it's a really tortured stretch that you have to make that connection, considering how it was the context. And
people
also,
are asking what's SRI, that's Stanford Research Institute.
We were involved in all this stuff together quite deeply. And also, I'm his brother. I think I know, and we were involved in all this stuff together quite deeply. I've been to Esalen many times. Does that make me working for the CIA? Jan seems to think that everybody with having anything to do with psychedelics who happened to pass through Esalen was all part of this big conspiracy. Well, that's just utter horseshit. All kinds of people pass through Esalen. That doesn't mean that they're all involved in some conspiracy. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's just such sloppy thinking.
There's so many intel connections behind McKenna and Dennis both. It's just absurd.
when all this comes up, I just feel like, well,
and then McKenna admitting that he's recruited by the FBI, and then he's at a CIA front organization under Aldous
Huxley. Just his medications or
know,
something. I don't know. He's seriously deluded.
Well, I appreciate you addressing it. I know that there are people who are curious about that, so I figured we'd at least acknowledge that.
Yeah.
So there's that, folks. And here, let's get this off the screen and go back here. There we go. Let me just move this back over so I can see. We had some good comments in the chat while that was playing. Where'd it go? One of these windows here has everybody in it. There it is. All right. So, yeah, Angela had some good comments in there going. Let's see. Jan has been on social media too long enough to know AJ will be discrediting to him to get involved with. If you do go on, you pretty much have to be light, Jan, because they just might shut you down, blah, blah, blah. They are probably already screwing with male births. There should be more male babies. Yes, they are. In fact, that's what all the soy formula is about and everything that they give kids to. Soy is very high in phytoestrogens. You should never give your male children a soy formula, etc. That's very toxic, especially for male babies. And then Sanchez says, yes, there are less boys being born. The ratio used to be 50-50. It's because of the hormones and the food and everything else that is changing things. That's correct. So anyway, did you have anything you wanted to add about that, Matthew?
Well, first off, let me say that was a great video, and you guys, everybody should share that one. But also look at the similarities between Terence and Rogan. There's a lot of parallels there. So as you've exposed all the intel connections with Terence and what his operation was, compare him to Rogan and look at the similarities between the two, because it's almost like Rogan stepped into that position in a new modern way, but it's very similar. And also anybody who has any questions about any of this stuff, who disagrees with you on this being an MK Ultra operation, this counterculture, share them the brain, give them the link to the brain. You cannot deny it.
Well, the issue is they won't even take the time to go through. They'll look at it and see a bunch of connections, but they won't bother to see how it all connects and all the, 11,000 citations in there, et cetera,
Yeah, unfortunately, because that thing, it's all there. It's everything you need. It's all there. So still, I think you should share it, and hopefully some people will look into it and wake up, because that needs to happen.
Yeah, and Mr. Cut, folks, says, we must share Jan and Matt's work. Everyone, please share with as many people as possible. And I'm going to say, download that Terence McKenna video as well and share it, repost it everywhere, as well as my edit of Matthew's video with the corrected audio. And you know what? We've already been on for an hour. What happened to this being a short discussion?
I don't know, man. But it's good, though.
So much for that, right? So there were other comments in here that I was just wanting to go through and see what else was good in here. I get aggravated that most are comprehending that with heavy mushrooms, DMT, etc., are doorways to communications with the demons. Yeah, it's not the drugs don't bring you to Logos. That's the issue. You might get some different perspectives on things under the influence, and I get all these idiot comments all the time. Jan Irvin's never tried them before. I mean, it's totally ridiculous. It's like I used to write books on this stuff.
Yeah.
And then I woke up in the middle of it going, wait a second, this isn't good. And I've exposed this on my show for years, and it's ridiculous when people always go for the most idiotic attack that I've never tried them. And if you had tried DMT, you would never say this, right? And it's like when you understand Logos, and that Logos is God, not being high out of your mind and the world's, the universe spinning inside out or whatever from DMT and all of this stuff, I have done that stuff. I have experienced that. And that's exactly what I'm warning people away from. It's the left-hand path. It's not the right-hand path. It's not true spirituality. It's not coming to Logos or truth. And that's really what people need to understand, you know. And people, please subscribe to this backup channel and smash that like button, and you know, promote this video out there, promote the Terence and Dennis McKenna exposed video, promote Matt's video on Joe Rogan being exposed. Let people know not to feed their children soy formula, you know, all of that garbage. It's just awful, but you know, get this work out there. Help as many people as we can. Matt, do you have anything else that you would like to add?
Well, yeah, just let me build on that point you made there. I see those comments all the time that this guy doesn't know anything about psychedelics. He's never taken them or what. He obviously doesn't know about them. But as you said, you wrote books on it. You know everything about it. And I sent Jan a podcast the other day from shortly. It was a Rogan Duncan Trussell podcast from shortly after Jan's interview with Joe back in the day. And Rogan elaborates on how Jan is the expert on psychedelics, and it takes someone as intelligent as him to drone through documents and really so Jan is truly an expert, and even Rogan claims that Jan is an expert.
You know what, dude? I downloaded that whole clip, so after you finish talking, I'm going to play that. And it's from Duncan Trussell, and I used to know Duncan Trussell too. Go ahead.
And then let me also say that I think that because I have also done, I've never done DMT, but I have done mushrooms and LSD and all that kind of stuff. And I think that there is there's definitely something spiritual about it. But as Jan said, it's like a left-hand path type of thing. And you really aren't living in truth when you're in that whole culture. And people like Rogan heavily influence that. People have no idea how much a podcast like that gets someone to go out there and do that. So if there is a spiritual angle to it, which I believe there is, it's probably a negative one.
Yeah, you're probably, well, you know, here's the thing is left-hand path is Satanism. Now, what I suspect is it really more shows you your own psyche, your own consciousness, and not true logos. I have had maybe one or two experiences that I would consider pretty phenomenal, but then you waste the rest of your life trying to get back to that rather than having, you know, rather than understanding it through logos and truth. And, you know, and that was what one of the big experiences that I had way back in my early 20s showed me. And then I wasted years and years and years trying to get back to that. And it's just, you know, name one person whose life is bettered by doing drugs, who, you know, LSD, mushrooms, DMT, ayahuasca, MDMA, all of this stuff. You see them all eventually crash out. It's like their whole life gets put on hold, you know, and then they're spending, you know, 51 weeks a year to build this ridiculous thing to take out to the desert at Black Rock and burn it rather than building their life, building their future. You know, so you know, all of this stuff ends up in a dead end. So let's go to this clip here. Hold on a second. I'm going to have to share the audio here. Just a second.
I ran out of air.
No, it's at 3 minutes.
What a
here,
great
so
sound that
is,
man.
What
an
like
incredible sound.
I'll never forget that one-time performance.
No, I don't know. And it's something that I actually spent some time looking for because I wanted. It's something that stuck in my head too.
Jan Irvin, he'll have it. He has everything.
I was, you know, within inches of going down to this ayahuasca conference that's happening in South America, and he's going down there. I saw him on the flyer. Yeah, I saw him on the flyer.
Jan's a great guy, but he's crazy.
Is he crazy?
I never went to that conference.
It's really weird to communicate with him. You know, he like will regurgitate facts at you without like connecting with you. You're not really communicating.
Yeah.
He's just regurgitating facts sometimes. Like we had him on the podcast, and I couldn't get him to just have a conversation. It had to be like a lecture. You know, it's like the way he, you know, goes into each individual subject it's like disseminating information like a robot. But he's a really smart guy.
Yeah.
It's just I don't want it to be. I try to tell people like when you come on the podcast, just talk to me, man. Talk to me like a real human being about like you do when I hang out with you.
Yeah.
When I hang out with you, you talk to me different than this. Why do you talk when you get on a podcast? Why does it all of a sudden become a lecture?
Right.
And some people.
And I want to say to that point right there, because when you're trying to present all of this information on MK Ultra, the goal is to be as factually accurate as possible, and not just spew a bunch of things and make dick jokes and then go ha ha ha. It's very important information. And it's unfortunate that Rogan decided that his audience wasn't smart enough to handle the information.
Comics sometimes, if they're uncomfortable, it'll be that. They'll be trying really hard to be funny.
Throw in those zingers.
Yeah, like planned out ones. You know what I mean? It's like podcasting is a tricky thing. And someone who is an expert on something like Jan is unquestionably an expert on psychedelics. Unquestionably. I mean, he's
And then later on, Rogan came out saying I was crazy, and here he's admitting I'm an expert. I'm clearly an expert, he says.
If I had a question on psychedelics to anybody, I would bring it to Jan Irvin. But having him on the podcast was just weird. And I feel bad. I feel like I shouldn't have... I don't know. I shouldn't have tried to steer the conversation one way or the other. I should have let it be boring. If I thought it was boring, I should just let it be boring instead of trying to pump it up and make it more interesting.
Well, that's the kind of the same thing. It's the tendency humans have to try to take control of the present moment, and podcasts are best when you're just in the moment and the thing starts turning into whatever.
Unfortunately, he thought I was trying to censor him,
which he was.
That I wasn't giving people enough
his
credit.
Whole
that's not what it was.
Hit piece with Simon Powell and everything that I exposed about Red Ice Radio and all the behind the scenes, that it's clear that there was censorship going on there.
It's like he's to be someone who's like that sort of a researcher. Sometimes you have to have this almost incredibly droning desire to go over details in a way that a normal person would black out and go, stop, just stop. Do you not understand there's no entertainment value in this conversation?
Right.
You're breaking it down and making it less. The subject on its own is really interesting and fascinating, but you're somehow or another managing to pound it down into something lifeless and boring. And it's not that I don't want to hear the information. It's just the way we're going about it here is so hard to listen to.
No, that's a very funny thing what you just said, is the way that certain people will become experts at a thing, and the thing itself is beautiful, but somehow their portrayal of the thing takes all the life out of it, and it reminds me of what priests do.
Well, there's people that want to develop a staid, sort of an academic approach to things, and they want to be regarded in a very certain and particular way. So they're trying to do things in a way that they would consider to be very professional. And by
professional.
Yeah, I mean, I think their world is very different than our world. The world of the stand-up comedian is very different than the author world, the world of the serious, psychedelic researcher. I mean, that's what Jan is. I mean, Jan's brilliant. I mean, don't get me wrong. What he does, he's fucking brilliant. And I like the guy. I just on the podcast, it just didn't work. And I blame myself for a lot of it.
Don't blame yourself.
I really do. I should have saw it coming. And it sort of damaged how I interact with him.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. I need to probably talk to him about it in person. Because I think he really just doesn't understand where I'm coming from. A lot of people don't know. There's a lot of people that tell you stories, and they're not that fucking interesting. You know those people? Mm-hmm. Not this guy, not Jan, but I have a friend.
All right, I think that's the end of it there.
Tell me,
Yep. Well, let me mention real quick a key point you hit on there. And actually that podcast is really interesting to watch, the dynamic between you. And when you're pointing out, don't dumb your audience down too much, Joe, because that's what he does. He goes,
I said that on the show, didn't I?
I know, it's awesome. And he just goes, well, I'm just a dummy and my audiences are just a bunch of dummies, but no, you can think for yourself. You're a human that can think for themselves, and you got to be able to judge information to get through life. You got to be able to look at situations and figure it out. So you're not dumb to the point where you can't figure out that there's a deception going on here. But he always uses that all the time. I'm just a dummy. My audience are just a bunch of dummies. They're not.
Yeah. I had about close to probably 1,000 emails from his audience after that. And this was in, 2011. And I haven't been friends with the guy since I went on his show. But I had about... I left his place after that show furious, and I never wanted to be friends with the guy again. And, I had about 1,000 emails from his audience apologizing to me for his behavior. That's like, took me weeks to go through all the emails, But, it's I don't know. The whole situation was sad and pathetic. And, he knew that I was coming on to expose MKUltra, and I think he was trying to spin it and ridicule it and make me look like a joke or whatever, rather than, allowing the information to just come out, And I thought, hey, this would be a good opportunity to expose this stuff. But it's unfortunate that he decided to become the mushroom and DMT guru and promoting the stupid stoned ape theory, which is complete garbage. That's, again, out of the Piltdown hoax, which was one of the largest academic scandals in history, quoting air quotes with that, one of the largest academic scandals in history exposed, because, when you see how academia runs and you realize all of these academic cells like that I've exposed in the Spies in Academic Clothing article, you see that most of academia is a fraud. So, let's see. And there's just idiots trying to cause trouble. So, anyway, do you have anything else you want to add, Matt, or should we wrap it up here?
I think this is a good point to wrap it up. I'm glad you got to address the Alex Jones stuff and that you allowed me to have my opinion on here. And I think you'll navigate through that situation wisely.
Thanks. And, well, if Alex sees this, which he's told me he watches my show often, if he sees this, that I know that that I know type of thing. And, I'll probably come on and I will caveat everything, and, I just hope that it doesn't result in me getting entirely shut down, but I wouldn't be surprised at this point. So thanks everybody for tuning in this morning. We had it wasn't a huge audience, but we had close to 90 people in there this morning. Thanks everybody for showing up and for, promoting the show. Please donate and please help the work. I can't do it without you, honestly. I'm going to post the link. Post the link in the chat there for people to donate and support the show. I really appreciate anyone's and everyone's support. Seriously, cannot do all of this without your help. And the more they censor me, the more support I need from the audience to be able to continue to do this. So please contribute, everyone, and have a great weekend. And thanks, Matt, for coming on this morning. I appreciate your time. And we'll catch you all later, everybody. Take care.
Bye.